this video, we're going to talk about the inverse of cosine of x. So the first thing we're going to do is start off with our cosine graph. And as we saw before with looking at sine and its inverse, the function has to be past the horizontal line test. So right now, we are not passing the horizontal line test. So we're going to have to erase it. And I keep erasing until it passes, which basically happens by cutting it from 0 to pi. So we cut the cosine so that the domain is only from 0 to pi, and the range is still from -1 to 1. Now this is very different from where we cut the sine graph. So if you remember, we cut the sine graph from -pi halves to pi halves. So this one, we're cutting it from 0 to pi. That's really important because when I go to do the cosine inverse, we're going to have a different set of values. So the set of values that we care about are basically from 0 to pi and their outputs. And I just ran a few random ones here so you could see what regular cosine looks like. So when we have our inverse, we switch the x's and y's. And then to solve for y, mathematicians made up cosine inverse, that's how we read that, cosine inverse x. It's also arc cosine. Okay, so that means the same thing, arc cosine. How this works is similar to sine inverse. We are going to plug in a number between -1 and 1 for x, and what we're going to get out is an angle. Now again, here, because we cut it from 0 to pi, those are the angles we're going to get back out, are between 0 and pi. So, for example, if you want to know what the cosine inverse, so let's come over here. If I want to know the cosine inverse of 1, that's just 0. And if I want to know the cosine inverse of -1, okay, well, here, if you think about the unit circle, or our original graph, you'll get a cosine of -1 at pi, again at 3 pi, again at -pi. But because this is where we cut it, my one answer is pi. So the cosine inverse of -1 is pi. All right. And then the cosine inverse of 0 is pi halves. So we're flipping all of our facts that we know about cosine to have this relationship. On my notes for this section, the very back page, there's a whole list of important cosine inverse values to know. So that would be a good thing to tag and make sure that you, it would be helpful if you memorized it, but at the very least that you have a reference for it as we work through problems. Okay. In the next video, we are going to talk about what the derivative of cosine inverse looks like. But for now, this is all we have.